This is Raphael and Caitlin, and today we are going to talk about the Napoleonic Code.
The Civil Code of the French is a set of laws that entered into force on 21st March 1804 during the last months of the French Consulate and is still in force to this day, although it has been amended multiple times since. It was written by a commission of 4 eminent jurists appointed in 1800. The commission was presided over most of the time by the second consul Jean-Jacques Régis de Cambacérès and sometimes by Napoleon, first consul at that time. The code was completed by 1801 but only published 3 years later.
The code was an important step in abolishing the former medley of feudal laws that had governed France for centuries. Before its enactment, France lacked a single set of laws, with the legal system being primarily composed of various local customs and traditions.
These laws were often complex, inconsistent, and varied from one region to another. The code changed that, as can be seen in Article 1. The laws are executory throughout the whole French territory. They shall be executed in every part of the territory from the moment at which the promulgation can have been known.
The influence of the Civil Code went beyond the borders of France. It was the first instance of a modern legal code adopted across Europe, and it even went further than just the continent.
Historian Robert Altman, a Napoleon specialist, regarded the code as one of the few documents that had influenced the entire world. It strongly impacted the legal systems of many countries formed during and after the Napoleonic Wars.
Developing nations across the world who wanted to modernize their legal systems used the Civil Code as a source of inspiration because it granted equality of rights before the law. Its influence outside Europe is particularly found in Latin America and Middle East.
Inspired by the codification of Roman law, the Civil Code intended to bring more clarity and accessibility into the legal system. It divided the law into 4 sections: persons, property, acquisition of property, and civil procedure. 5 great principles can be found in the code.
Equality. All citizens are equal before the law, which doesn't mean there are no social inequalities. Equality also meant that, as Article 8 states, every Frenchman shall enjoy civil rights.
Hierarchization of the family. Napoleon considered the family to be the basic social unit that needed to be protected and organized. The code placed the father at the top of the family pyramid.
He was supposed to act en bon père de famille and had authority over his children and wife.
These principles have been heavily modified since, but they can be seen in the following articles of the original code. Article 108. A married woman has no place of residence but that of her husband. Article 144. A man before the age of 18 and a woman before 15 complete are incapable of contracting marriage. Here we can notice the age gap, since women could be married when younger. Article 148. The son who has not attained the full age of 25 years, the daughter who has not attained the full age of 21 years, cannot contract marriage without the consent of their mother or father. In case of disagreement, the consent of the father is sufficient. Article 229. The husband may demand a divorce on the ground of his wife's adultery. And Article 230. The wife may demand a divorce on the ground of adultery in her husband when he shall have brought his concubine into their common residence. The code granted even fewer rights to women than to children. This principle reflected the societal norms of the time and Napoleon's conservative and authoritarian views.
Another principle was the defense of the right of ownership. This meant that everybody could own property, and their property was absolute, which meant that it couldn't be questioned except for public interest reasons, with a fair and preliminary compensation. This principle appears, for example, in the following articles. Article 587. Private persons have the free disposition of property belonging to them. Article 711. Ownership in goods is acquired and transmitted by succession, by donation between living parties, or by will and by the effect of obligations. It also covered the revolutionary principle of partage, which was the subdivision of estates between male heirs.
Then there was the principle of civil liberty, which guaranteed freedom of contracts with equality between the two contracting parties.
And finally, the non-confessionality of the state. The state replaced the church as a fundamental authority. For example, with marriage, that had to be established in the town hall before being solemnized religiously, or else it was null. This principle is where secularism in France today comes from.
The code also prohibited ex post facto laws, meaning that laws could not be retroactively applied to events that happened before their introduction. As seen in Article 2, the law ordains for the future only. It has no retrospective operation.
All in all, this legal milestone, established just 2 months before the beginning of the empire, shaped the society of that time by promoting the equality of all citizens before the law. To conclude, even though Napoleon wanted to establish an empire, his code was the fruit of French Revolution, as it followed some principles and ideas of the revolution and was largely inspired by revolutionary law.
And finally, our fun fact of the day, you may have heard of the law prohibiting the act of naming a pig Napoleon. Well, this law actually doesn't exist. It is a myth.
Goodbye, see you tomorrow!